Go live. Hey folks, I'm back. It's Wednesday. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Elaine Marolakos Edelson here with Astrology Mojo. And let's see, turn up the volume so you can hear me. And then we're going to be talking about Astrology 101 today. Isn't that cool? The beginning happened about a little over 5,000 years ago. Hey, Kimberly. So, okay, couple of things I just wanted to talk about. Oh, who had a crazy tech day today? Everywhere I went, my password was not valid. Even our credit union bank, they switched over and upgraded something and nothing was working. Okay, so that tells me that structures are being reconfigured as Saturn goes direct tomorrow. Exactly tomorrow. So it made our day a little bit more interesting. A couple of announcements. So I will be appearing live in my hometown. A small little impromptu salon at Raven's Call on September 9th in the village of Oak Creek in Sedona. And let me give you, Dean, if you're around, can you put up a link to that? I will click on this link so you can see. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. From Fear to Love, live channeled readings and EFT tapping, Sunday, September 9th at 2 to 4 p.m. And you can call my office to register if you like. It's a very small, intimate salon grouping. 928-284-3716. And then Dean will post a link eventually when he gets to it. Okay, so, all right, I'm excited. If you have your chart or you just want to ask some questions about astrology, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I want to show you something. People were asking, what time will I be here during the week? And so I started out doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 p.m., bookends, and then 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And then I switched it and did 10 a.m. bookends, and because people are asking, I can't make it at that time. Can you? So I'm rotating my schedule so that I can help everybody I can and give everyone a chance to check out what's going on. All right. So that means Friday, September 7th, I will be back here on Facebook, and we'll be talking about Astrology 101, Part 2. All right, so astrology. It goes way back and to the beginning of time. Even before things were registered, people were always looking at the planets, trying to figure out what they were and what was happening. But first recorded charts, and I'll actually show you a picture of that. I'll make a note to show you a picture of the cuneiform. And on Friday, and it was a clay tablet etched with symbols. And so it didn't actually look like a chart, but it was pretty cool. And when the Babylonians took over, and then the Greeks took over, things began to evolve over time. Now, what I like to tell people is that the planets don't make you do anything, that we live in a cooperation with the cosmos. When you make a move, the planets reflect it. When the planets make a move, you feel it because we are all connected energy-wise. And so how could we not feel something? We may not be aware that Saturn is spinning into direct motion right now, but you will feel something. And depending on your sign, your rising sign, your moon sign, your chart and all that, you'll feel whatever it is you're feeling. Now, some people are determined to get going. Other people are sidetracked by technical data like we were today, and other people are just kind of hanging out. Other people are getting really upset and judgments are flying. So, anything goes. So when I talk about the transits, what I'm talking about, and I'm going to give you a picture of this. A transit is when a planet moves through a constellation and it constantly rotates. So I'm going to show you the wheel. If you're just beginning with astrology and you're not familiar with it, astrology is literally the study of the stars as it relates to, it's a human science. It's not an exact science. It is due to interpretation. And as you evolve, so do the definitions of each of the planets. So as an example, and let me show you this chart. This is for transits today at 4:38 hours. So this is the future right now. You're looking at the future. Look at that. The sun is in the sign of Virgo and Mercury is in Leo. The moon is in Cancer, 28 minutes from now, MST time, also Arizona time. Venus is in Libra, Jupiter is in Scorpio, Saturn is in Capricorn, so is Pluto, Mars as well, and Neptune is in Pisces, and Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. And so what's really cool about all these symbols is that each one represents a different energy in your life. That's what the planets do. They talk about, as one astrologer said to me once, very many years ago, that the planets are there to help you plan it, right? So what time is it? That's what you want to know. That's why the house, the wheel, has 12 parts to it called houses, and each one represents a different aspect of life, many different aspects of life. But essentially, when you're looking at, gee, what's going on in my life right now, or what's coming up? I have a client I'm doing a session with tomorrow, and she's going to be leaving the country to do some business. So we're going to be looking at that for her. And, so whatever is happening in your life right now, it's like astrology is like a clock. And so you want to ask yourself, what time is it? And sometimes you have a difference of opinion with your own chart. You want things to be moving faster than they are. But then the universe says, yeah, we need you to slow down. So it's always about your highest and best, and not always about what, we want right now. Because if that's what we did, 20 minutes ago, I was looking at shoes on DSW. And they said, hey, what size are you? That was the ad. Hey, what size are you? I said, ooh, I'm an 8.5. What do you have? They said, well, how much do you want to save? And they had all these different color buttons. And I thought, I want to save 50 to 70%. So I clicked on that one. And I was just shopping for shoes. Of course, I didn't buy anything because I had to be here. So it is not time for me to buy shoes, but it is time for me to talk about astrology. Now, the sun and the moon are not planets. They are spheres in the heavens that help the earth and the people on the earth and all the beings on the earth to regulate their rhythms, circadian rhythms, their emotional rhythms, their dream state, their conscious state. Now, in astrology, the sun represents masculine energy, and it is basically the focus. That's all it is. It's the focus. So right now, and let me show you this again for those just joining us. Today's transits, the sun is in the sign of Virgo. And, here, now I can see it, the chart and you. Well, not really you, but so the sun is in Virgo. So what does that mean? Well, with the sun in Virgo, we're looking at things being more detailed, possibly a little bit more judgmental. Virgos that I know they have the most pristine closets, but there's one space in their house or their office that is just filled with clutter. Because for a Virgo, that represents the mind and too many details, too many thoughts. So as the sun is now in Virgo, the focus right now for the next couple of weeks is going to be about those details. So how does that apply to you? Hey, Carol, I'm so glad you made it. We're talking about basic astrology. Now, with the sun in Virgo, each different sign will experience something different. We were just talking about this yesterday. Our daughter, Aaliyah, who is 19, and she's just starting her second year of college, and she's sick. And yesterday was her first day of school, but she went. And she's pushing through it, and she said, don't worry, Mom and Dad, I'm taking care of myself. I went to the store and got all my homeopathics, and I'm drinking soup and chamomile tea, and I'm taking aconitum and turmeric and everything that she needs. So we're very happy and relieved that she's taking care of herself. And I said to her, now, Aaliyah, this happens. We need to break this pattern. And she said, I know, right? Every time the sun is in Virgo, I get sick. So if we were to look at a chart and see that Virgo rules the 12th house, the 8th house, or the 6th house in a person's natal chart, we might look at the stressors that are taken on in those houses. The 12th house being emotional trauma or stress, the 8th house also physical and spiritual, and the 6th house the physical health. So, and she does indeed in her secondary chart, she has Virgo in the 12th house. So when this rolls around, every year, so the planets and the houses in astrology mimic the calendar in life. Now, the number 12 is very prevalent throughout time. There, even though they talk about the 12 apostles, there were actually over 40, but they focus on 12, or there's 12 months in a year, or there's 12 houses in astrology, or there's 12 signs. So right now what we're looking at is every month the sun enters a different constellation. And when it does, you have an experience. Is it because the planets are doing something to you? No, it is because it is your timing. And your timing might say, oh, well, it's time to take care of my body. And if I don't, I might get sick. Or, oh, it's time to start working on something I had put on the back burner. Now I want to get going with it. Or, oh, it's time for play and romance and maybe, hanging out with some kids and babysitting or writing a curriculum. We have a neighbor who is a Leo. And I said to her this summer, and she was working as a caregiver for a pre-nursery school. And I said, well, with the sun in Leo, my friend, you might be thinking about different work or how to, ask for a raise or change jobs or whatever. Well, I saw her drive by yesterday and she said, guess what, Elaine? I gave notice. They weren't treating me right. I left. I'm leaving. And I said, I'm so proud of you. That's amazing. So that's the timing for her. So the sun, as I said, is masculine focus. And it is what you're looking at. That's it. That's all it is. The moon is the feminine energy, and it's more about dream state, feelings, the unconscious self. And then there's Mercury. I'm going to go from the inside out in the solar system. The inner planets are known as Mercury, Venus, and Mars because they travel the fastest around the sun. So Mercury represents basically how you communicate. How do you talk? If you have a Mercury in Aries, you might love to talk all the time or take over the conversation or interrupt people or talk about, anything that excites you. If you have a Mercury in Pisces, you may be someone who is laid back a little bit. You listen more. You wait for the right time to say something. You wonder if you should say something. If you have a Mercury in the sign of, let's say, Gemini, well, you're very specific about what you want to say, when you want to say it, how you want to say it, and the syntax in which you say it, and possibly with the grammar as well. But you also want to make sure, so where Mercury is in your chart will determine in what position, which sign it's in, and also which house it's in will determine what you like to talk about and how you like to express yourself. Now, Venus is hi, Neff. The planet Venus represents beauty, art, protection, and finance, believe it or not. And part of the moon as well deals with your flow of finances. But Venus has to do with, if you think, and Mercury guides Gemini and Virgo, and the moon guides Cancer. And hi, Christy. And and Venus guides Libra and Taurus as well. Now, are Librans and Taurans exactly the same? No, of course not. Neither are every individual. So Venus would represent where you derive pleasure from beauty, art, cooking, or investments, financial investments. And also, yes, falling in love, romance. Mars deals more with the actual sex of things and the pursuit of desire, where Venus deals more with the aesthetics of how you design something or how you like to do your hair or your makeup. And I was just working on my astrology masterclass today. And when it's done, I'll let you know. It's an awesome program. And it's going to help you. It's a masterclass that teaches you how to read your own chart. And it's very thorough. So I was looking for a photograph to go with one of the modules, and it was talking about Venus. So I put out an email with 2 pictures to the Librans, the Libra risings I know, and the Taurians that I know. And I said, I need a vote. Which one is more appealing to you? Which one feels more like you? And one of the photos was a woman multitasking. She is a woman standing there with 6 arms, like Shakti and Shiva, and she's got a baby in one arm. She's got kitchen utensils in another. She has a computer in another. She has a basket of laundry in another. And then she has a bowl of fruit or something. So it's like, loving to cook and take care of the kids and be the ultimate super person. That's a very Libran energy. Taurus is more laid back. So Venus represents how you set up your aesthetics. Now, again, Venus in a particular sign, hi star, would also further that description. So if you have Venus in the sign of Aquarius, well, you're pretty avant-garde. You may find very many different people attractive, where, Venus in Aries, they're quick to jump into bed. They're quick to jump into business. They're quick to jump into a conversation. So how you express yourself through Venus, through your aesthetics and your aesthetic nature, is defined by Venus, the sign it's in, and also the house that it's in your chart. And I'll talk more about the houses on Friday. I'll be back on Friday at 1 p.m. for more of Astrology 101 to give you a heads up about what to look for when I say, oh, the sun's in Virgo right now, or, the moon's in Leo. Let's see, what's the next planet? Oh, Mars. Okay. So where Mercury represents how you communicate, Venus is all about your aesthetics and how you view finances and where your, I want to say, defense systems are, because Venus is all about protection. Venus energy is about drawing to you the people that can help you. It's also about you setting a boundary. And Venus energy is also about how you like to move. Hi there. Hi, Samantha. About how you like to move through life with certain beliefs that help you to feel comfortable. Venus just wants to feel comfortable. And not aside from the love and the romance, it wants to feel comfortable in its own skin. So sometimes if you have a Venus in Capricorn, that's a little bit more difficult planetary aspect or combination, because Capricorn doesn't feel very girly, if you're a female. And so it's more, the business suit or the utilitarian outfit. It doesn't always allow, softness to come its way. It needs it, it craves it, but, that energy doesn't always allow. So again, it depends on where things are. Now, with Mars represents, remember, the planets are not doing anything to you. They each represent, it's like a syllabus. And if you look at, where's my Mars? Where's my Venus? Where's my Mercury? That gives you better insight, like a Myers-Briggs, into who you are and how you can express yourself and where the limitations might be so you can go beyond them. And now where Mercury represents how you communicate, first on the inside, not just talking, but in your mind, your perceptions, your judgments. And Venus is your aesthetic value and your beauty, your sense of beauty, and also food and wine. Now, 2 kinds of wine. One, the kind that's in a bottle that you like to drink, or the other, the kind that has the letter H in it, and you just can't stop going on about, wait, that didn't feel right. That wasn't okay. I didn't, the whining part. So Mars represents how you act and what's your motivation. And it also deals with sex and desire and anger and impatience, but also a very quick-witted nature. And again, where Mars is placed in your chart, in what sign, Mars in Taurus is very regimented on values and security, because Taurus ruled and guided by Venus is, well, I want to feel safe. I want to feel secure. I want to value what I'm doing. I want to value this glass that I bought that I think is beautiful because it makes me feel happy. And so Mars in Taurus is a completely different energy than Mars in Pisces, where they love to watch movies and they will quote lyrics and, to define life, or they actually might write screenplays. My husband has a Mars in Pisces and he's a screenwriter as well. I have a Mars in Pisces. My world is metaphysics. So, where your Mars is in the houses also tells a story about how you like to act and what motivates you. So if you have Mars in the 7th house, Mars is a fiery energy. And in a partnership house, it can be combative, or you might attract someone who is combative, or it can relate to how you, how much sex you like to have, or how active you want your partnership to be, and say, well, let's invite another partner, or let's go out to dinner with the couples, instead of it being more private. So where Mars is in the house. And if you're just joining us, I want to show you again, this is what today's transits look like. Actually, this is in the future. I made this for 4:38 today, and we're not there yet. Or 7:38 if you're on the East Coast, and we're not there yet. So the sun is in Virgo, and you can see that Mercury is in the sign of Leo, the moon is in Cancer. And so when we look at this, we'd say, well, what's the difference? I have this awesome program that calculates time, and I can look in the future up until whenever, or go back to the beginning of time and look at, well, what was going on globally, universally in my community when the sun was doing this thing. Or as we were talking about earlier, my daughter gets sick every September. And I said to her, we need to break this pattern. And so every September when the sun is in Virgo, she's overwhelmed. She's anxious. And Virgo is an energy that represents the nerves, the nervous system as well, the digestion system, and judgments and perceptions. So now I'm going to, if you note, the sun is at 13 degrees, 20 minutes of Virgo. And now the next one is that I want to show you is tomorrow at the same exact time. The sun is at 14 minutes and 19 degrees of 14 degrees and 19 minutes of Virgo. So we're advancing through the degrees. There's only 30 degrees in any house, and these are the 12 houses in astrology. And we'll talk more about that on Friday, though. I don't want to confuse you. So when we look at how we speak, it's Mercury. When we look at how we like to set up our aesthetics, our romance, our factors in romance, and we look at Venus and style, beauty, romance, and also, again, finances and protection. Defense systems come to mind. And that can mean, with Venus and Mars, that combination, if they're pretty close to the sun, usually Mercury and Venus in a chart are pretty close to the sun when you're born. And so what I just showed you, this is it's like taking a snapshot of the universe, and this is where the planets are in relationship to one another. And then let's say someone was born at 4:38 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on September 5th, 2018, just a few minutes from now. This is what their natal chart would look like. And their rising sign, their moon sign, their sun sign, and where all the planets are positioned. So that's what happens when you're born. There's a snapshot taken. And your natal chart is your reference for life. It progresses over time, and that's called a progression. Or there are transits that move around that, and those are transits, but your natal chart is your natal chart. And what you're born with, it's like the hand you're dealt with in astrology. And again, it's like a compendium of your potential, because the planets aren't doing it to you. It's a way to define your talents. Now, after Mars, we have Jupiter. And Jupiter represents your cultural travel, compassionate self. It's the part of you that wants to know more and wants to know how to expand. How do I expand? Do I need to travel to do that? Do I need to read more to do that? Do I need to go to school for 30 years to do that? And so Jupiter's the fun planet unless it goes overboard, and then it's like it can't stop eating, it doesn't stop drinking, it doesn't stop having parties. That's the extreme. For the extreme in Mercury, it's way too much talking or no talking at all, or the perceptions create negative judgments. On the positive side, it's listening, it's learning, it's relationships to siblings as well. Mercury is also relationships to siblings. And then Venus is what kind of love life you want to have, where your romantic self is, what you consider beautiful, and how you put beauty into the world, how you make your money as well, and what kind of foods you like to eat. And then there's Mars, and the positive is the kind of action you take. What motivates you? The negative is way too impulsive, jumping off a cliff before, before you have the parachute on, or it's anger and it's frustration and it's impatience. With Jupiter, the extremes are, I want to study spiritualism, or I want to study about the law, or I want to learn a different language, and then I don't stop. So it becomes a compulsion and an obsession. Now, that's the negative end. The positive end of Jupiter is how you like to expand, what turns you on about the world and where you can go. Again, the sign that Jupiter is in will play a great part in how you understand something about your own expansive, compassionate nature. Now, I have a client who has a Jupiter in Aries, and it is quite typical with Jupiter in Aries that once they hear one thing or believe one thing, that's it. There's nothing else to look at. That's the thing. That's the only way it is. It's that way and it's no other way. And I said to my client, well, let's consider this. In order to expand your horizons, let's consider that there is a way and then there's another way. And she said, all right, that's fair. I'll look at that. And she has a Mars in Libra. So her actions are not to argue, but to be very diplomatic. And when she said, that's fair, I said, oh, your Mars in Libra is showing. Now, a Jupiter in the sign of Scorpio would be, which right now, Jupiter is in the sign of Scorpio. So if you are a Scorpio, Scorpio rising, Scorpio mooner, you have Jupiter in Scorpio in your chart. This is a really beautiful time for you because you're expanding. Now, I had a client call me once, and she was an actress, and she had been on some auditions, and things didn't pan out. And then she said to me, she sent me an email, and she said, all right, how come nobody's calling? And I said, I don't understand the question. And she said, well, I've already gone on some auditions, and I didn't get them. Now, Jupiter is in my 10th house of career. How come I'm not getting the job I want? And I said, well, you got to really put yourself out there more than just 3 times. It has to be a consistent effort. So you're doing your part. It's not just Jupiter goes into Scorpio and boom, yay, you're done. Or Jupiter in your sign. Jupiter spends about a year in each sign as it travels and traverses the universe through different constellations. So when Jupiter's coming up on your sign, you want to jump up and down and focus on the thing that you are ready for. Focus on that thing that you've been wanting, and then act as if. It's not just you focus and go, yes, I want $20,000 more in my bank account this year. I'm so excited. It's Jupiter's in my sign or my rising sign. I'm so happy. You have to act as if. You need to put the labor in. You have to put the value into the world so that you get it back. So when Jupiter has a return, meaning it returns to the same position of your birth that's in your chart, and if you've got Jupiter in Scorpio, then it means right now you have the potential and the opportunity to expand on who you are. Now, where it is in your chart will give you the topics. If it's in the 4th house, you're expanding on your home, your family, you might be pregnant. It could be you are moving, buying real estate. If Jupiter is expanding in Scorpio in the 8th house, you could be up for a raise, a promotion, or a spiritual awakening. You know, if Jupiter is expanding in your 11th house of friends and dreams and wishes coming true, you could be in a group situation now or attract a group to you that really wants to give you a leg up. So again, it depends on where things are in your chart and how you can utilize this energy. So for example, let me just take a sip. I have a Mercury in Aries. Can you tell? I don't put a period on my sentence. Or actually, I know people with Mercury in Pisces who can start talking about one thing over here and then, as my husband says, go to grandma's house. It can be 14,000 topics in one paragraph with no period. I do put periods on my sentence, however. Okay, so Kimberly is asking, what about Jupiter in Scorpio? Well, I think I just explained that. And if anybody else has a question about astrology itself, about the planets or what they are experiencing again, think of your year as a clock. And I think of the Hunger Games sometimes. It's like, oh, it's a clock. There's thunder. There's the crazy, mist. There's the baboons. No, it doesn't have to be traumatic. Think of your year as a clock. And I used to say to myself, wow, every January and February, there is so much business. I get so much business. And then when I really got into learning more about astrology close to 35 years ago, I put it to practice so that I would set up events, or I would have specials, or I would purposely go to networking events to meet more people during that phase. So I want you to think about you doing the same. Now, when you do this, and the doorbell just rang actually. I think my new headphones are here. Oh, I'm so excited. Amazon.com coming through. When you look at the things in your life that can be a potential expansion for you, let's say Mars is entering your house of money, your income, second house. What that means is that you might be prone to wanting to spend more money so that you can make more money. You might need to invest in equipment or in something that would really help create value for yourself. Second house deals with value. We're going to talk more about the houses on Friday at 1 p.m. I'll be back. And so again, where the houses are makes a big difference in what's going on and where the planets are in those houses. Now, the planet after Jupiter is, you know what? I have to tell you one really important thing. I'll do that on Friday when I talk about the houses and the definitions. Saturn is the next planet, and Saturn represents the part of you, as I talked about in previous events. Saturn represents the part of you that really needs to get in touch with their karmic energy, why they've come here, how to move beyond their own fears and doubts and their own negative limitations. Sometimes the limitation is a positive thing because it helps you to set a structure and a boundary. So Saturn is all about, the big stop sign in the world. So where Saturn is in your chart, in whichever house and in whichever sign, you can determine, okay, what's my karma, with whom, and what are some of the ways I can get through it. And that's why I do personal readings, because that's really going to help you understand what your karma is and how to literally get over yourself. Now, I'm just going to segue into, for people who are not familiar with my work, I've been doing astro-intuitive work for about 33 years professionally. And on September 9th, here in Sedona, in the village of Oak Creek, I am going to be doing an intimate salon workshop called How to Move from Fear to Love. And that is from 2 to 4 p.m. And my husband listed the link in the comment section, so you can click on that if you're local, if you're moving into town, if you're driving through town, if you're in Flagstaff, Cottonwood, Camp Verde, Sedona, surrounding, even Phoenix. Come on up. You're only 90 minutes away. And it's going to be a small event. I like to keep it small, under 10 people, so I can really focus on everyone. And so check that out, How to Move from Fear to Love. The link, again, as I said, is in the comments. Okay. Hey, Jesse, thanks for joining us. So are there any questions that anyone has about astrology? Anything at all? And I'll continue talking about the rest of the planets in just a moment, while I wait for the 10-second delay. For those of you who don't know, I'm also the astrology columnist for the Sedona Monthly Magazine, which comes out 10 times a year. Whoops, there it is. This is the latest one. And it's also online, I believe. You can get it nationwide in any store that carries magazines. And I was told even Walmart. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's see, we're talking about Saturn, what it represents, your structure, your boundaries, your karma. And speaking of karma, okay, the positive version of Saturn is you know how to say no. And you're very strategic about your direction. And you have a sense of ambition. Not just ambition, but how you can put your authority into the world. That's a beautiful thing, right? The negative side of Saturn is I'm too afraid to do that. I don't want people to see me. I should just lay low, be in the background. I'm not someone who understands, how to be out there in the world. It's just too much. I'm just going to go meditate, pray, or, beat myself up for something that I did in 6 lifetimes ago. That's what Saturn is. So Jody says, what is a Saturn return? I was told I was going through this year. Oh, okay. A Saturn return is simply, or a Jupiter return is, and you won't have a Neptune return because of the amount of time it takes for Neptune to circle through the constellations to come back to the exact position that you were born in. So if you were born with Saturn in Capricorn, because you're having a Saturn return this year, than you were, that means that when the degree hits, Saturn takes 2.5 years to transit through one constellation. So you will be spending 2.5 years, approximately, depending on what degrees are in your chart. But let's just say when you have your Saturn return, that's when the universal stop sign comes up and says, okay, and you will have this every 7 years. Birth, age 7, 14, 21, 28, 27. So when you have a Saturn return, the universe cycles round and says, okay, what were you doing 7 years ago? Are you ready to continue to set those boundaries? Are you ready to stop this negative self-abusive behavior? Are you ready to set a structure for success and move forward? These are the questions. So you come to a stop sign every 7 years. And then every 29 years, approximately 27 to 29 years, when Saturn comes back to your sign, if you were born with Saturn in Capricorn, 29 years later, you're going to have, or 27 to 29 years later, you're going to have a Saturn return. That's when suddenly you feel more mature. You want to settle down. Maybe you want to buy a house, maybe have a child. Maybe you're looking at your relationship and you're saying, this is not for me. So when a person has a Saturn return, it's about getting more sober and serious about making the connection to your spiritual self so that you can put more of you into the world and to really love who you are and to understand that boundaries help you get to those places. Samantha Weir, if someone doesn't know when they were born, date, month, how can they determine as close as possible when they may have been born according to astrology? Okay, well, if you know the day you were born, like you were born November 12th, then the year 1986. Okay, right? You've got that information. That's basic astrology. And if you can talk to relatives or family to find out within a 2-hour period, exact time is always the greatest because it gives numerological information as well. But within 2-hour period, what would that look like? Was it, hey, grandma, when was I? Well, I remember your uncle had to come and shovel snow and the sun was just rising. Okay, so it was dawn in November, so you'd have to clue yourself in. Or you find out where the Bureau of Vital Statistics are in the state that you were born. And you write to them or you call them and say, I would like a copy of my birth certificate, and you must specify with the birth time. Bureau of Vital Stats in the state that you were born, asking them for a copy of your birth certificate with the birth time. Now, sometimes hospitals write it and have records in the hospital, but most times it goes straight to the Bureau of Vital Stats, and it will cost anywhere from $5 to $50 to get that information, and then you can know. There's another method in astrology called rectification, and it takes about 2 to 3 hours. And I charge just as much for rectification as I do for a chart, because it takes a lot of time, and then we work backwards to find out what were the major influences in your life: births, deaths, marriages, car accidents, changing jobs, moving, from state to state, any kind of medication, so like major pinpoints, and then we work backwards. So that's another way to do it. Now, let's see, what is Saturn is in Capricorn for you? What's that mean? Well, as I said in previous Facebook Live, Saturn in Capricorn, which we're in right now, is about setting a structure, is about overcoming your victim, the victim's voice. It's about healing your body, your mind, your spirit, so that you can move forward with your karma. And if your karma is to, be a designer, and you have difficulty doing that because your wrist hurts, well, Saturn, the planets also deal with different parts of the body in astrology, as they were deemed by the ancients. So Mercury has a lot to do with your thinking, your digestive system, because the large intestine is tied into the brain. And so the nervous system as well. Venus has to do with the thyroid and the adrenals. And Mars deals with the head, the blood system, the eyes, sometimes the ears, but Mars shares that with Venus and Taurus, but the ears, the head, the eyes. And then Jupiter deals with the hips and the thighs, and Saturn will deal with the bones, the skeletal structure, the teeth, the nails, the joints, the knees, and the parts of your body that literally make up your structure. So you've got the skeleton, you've got the joints that get things to work. So let's say you've got a Saturn in Capricorn and you want to be a designer, and, your wrist is hurting. Well, why? Are you self-sabotaging? Or have you been sitting in an unhealthy way at the computer because this is a joint and you want to take care of it? And there are bones, so you have to look at things like that. Also, I see you have a child that was adopted. The year could be 80, 98, or 99, but month and actual day is not known. Oh, I see. They're from a different country. Okay, well, in that case, it's more of an intuitive reading, and then I would use, or a practitioner, if they do this, would use a pendulum swing, and that's what I would use. And I would rectify also to find out what was the day this person was adopted. That's a major point in their history. And I had to do this for my mother, actually. I had to rectify her chart because there were no real birth records in the Greek Orthodox Church. So she knew the day she was born, of course, around that time. But I went through her life and pinpointed those major turning points and events. And then we got it down to one of two rising signs, and then I asked her other questions, and then by her expression, her behavior, we narrowed it down, and pretty much we got it pinpointed within the hour. So that works as well. So if you don't know what year your child was born in, then it would be looking at rectifying the chart and also looking at major turning points for that child. And so let's see, what else are we talking about? Thanks for the question. We are talking about Saturn. Now Neptune Okay? Neptune is a planet that represents your illusions, your addictions. Neptune represents your fantastical, magical being, metaphysical self, and governs the planet, the sign Pisces. So Mercury guides Gemini and Virgo, Taurus guides Libra and Taurus. I'm sorry, Venus guides Libra and Taurus, Mars guides Aries, and Jupiter guides Sagittarius, Saturn guides Capricorn, Neptune is the planet that guides the sign of Pisces. And so it's more magical, it's idealism, it's the ideal vision. Again, the planets don't do these things to you, but you are imbued with an energy that says, oh yeah, I have clients and friends who are Pisces, and they can be quite artistic, or they love movies, or they're actually actors, or they're political because they have a stance and they have an ideal vision of how something ought to be, and they get involved in their community. And so, every sign will be different, even though you're ruled by a particular or governed by a particular sign. Your own karma is imprinted. I could look at a chart and just say, oh, look here, and let me show you. So let's just say I'm looking at this chart that happens tomorrow. Okay. This is September 6, 2018, 4:38 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, or also Arizona time. And there is the sun in Virgo. I would say, oh, okay, well, the sun in Virgo with a Mercury in Virgo, they are very detailed oriented. They might lean toward metaphysics, but with an Aquarius rising sign, they're a little avant-garde, and they might really need to use music to help express themselves, et cetera, et cetera. They have Pluto and Saturn in the 12th house. They've got a few, ghosts in the closet they need to work with because they consider themselves a victim. They're going to have to really, work through that, blah, blah, and I would go on. Now, that would just be looking at a chart. When I actually have a person's name and I read the person on top of that, then I read the karma on top of the astrology. And that's where my intuition comes in. And that's the added piece that I think is missing when people say, oh, I just read my astrology horoscope, and it's, it was like yesterday's, or any sign could be that. So when I write these forecasts in Sedona Monthly Magazine, I have 75 words. That's all I can basically use in one forecast for one sign. So I've learned how to really edit down a person's, whatever's going on intuitively. I cannot write for an individual in a forecast. However, I intuit what is the sign's breakthrough right now? What is that sign's dilemma right now? And so I do my best. And I get a lot of phone calls from people saying, you were in my head. I'm a Leo with a Virgo rising. Oh my gosh, you're so scary. You were in my head. And so it's not that, looking at astrology, you can know someone, you can understand the characterization, the personality, the drives, the motivation, the behaviors, the limiting behaviors, the sabotage. But once I read the person on top of the chart, that's when karma comes into play, and the sky's the limit of where we can go and exactly how we can break through a lot of things. Hey, Phyllis. I'm happy you're here. Hi, everyone. A bit late, but made it. Yay. I'm so happy you made it. I'm going to take a drink. So does anybody else have another question about astrology itself? And then I'll continue talking about Neptune and the rest of them. Okay. Oh, let me show you this. This is really fun, and I think it can help you understand. I'm going to move this over. Okay, so if you're new to astrology, or you're just, just starting out and a couple of things, here's what the signs are and the planets that govern them. So Aries is governed by Mars, and the sign of Taurus is governed by Venus. The sign of Gemini has Mercury at its back and its muse, and Cancer is guided by the moon. Leo is guided by the sun. Virgo Mercury again, along with Gemini, but they express it differently because Gemini is an air sign and Virgo is an earth sign. So Virgo might be more design oriented or health oriented. Gemini might be more literally mercurial, where they need to change things up and switch careers, every 5 years. Libra is also guided by Venus the way Taurus is, but again, because they are different elements, Taurus is an earth sign and Libra is an air sign. So they have the same need for justice, design, beauty, art, food, but their approach is different. Now, Scorpio is guided by Pluto, the planet Pluto, which is no longer a planet, dwarf star now, okay. And Sagittarius is governed by Jupiter. It's all about expansion and travel, but then again, the negative side is judgment and cynicism, but the positive side is compassion. And Capricorn is guided by Saturn, and Aquarius by the planet Uranus, and that is the correct pronunciation, Uranus, like you're on us, and it means heavens in Greek. And Pisces is guided by the planet Neptune. Okay, so just so you have that as a basis. And with Neptune guiding Pisces, again, they could move into addiction easily because the illusion is easier to live with than the actual reality. Now, what is that? That's subjective. Everyone's reality is different. But a Pisces might want to, as I said earlier in another Facebook Live, the building could be on fire, but Pisces is admiring the architecture because it's too painful. It hurts too much, the ugliness to look at. It's like, oh, I can't look at destruction. It's too scary. It's too scary. But then again, I have a client who's a Pisces, but a Scorpio rising sign. That person wants to see, reads every murder mystery novel there is. That's Scorpio and Pluto energy, is very private, but is like a spy, can really get behind the scenes and wiggle their way into the information. And so how planets are coupled in your chart also tell a huge story. And let's see, we have Neptune. What's next? We've got Uranus is the planet that represents freedom. Freedom, revolt, rebellion, innovation, excitement, entrepreneurialism. Let's get out there and technology, higher technology. Now, what I like to say is Uranus invented the chain because the negative side of Uranus is putting itself first and creating minions or slaves. But then Uranus also, the positive side, the higher aesthetic side, the more esoteric side of Uranus, invented the bolt cutter. It's all about freedom. Let's find a way to make this work. Let's find a way to stop hunger in this country. Let's find a way to work together through innovative methods, through space and technology, through going against the grain, up the down staircase. This is Uranus. And so if you have a prominent Uranus in your chart, it can be explosive. Depends on what sign it's in, which house it's in. If you've got a prominent Uranus that is dealing with career, you are headed for fame. There are no holes barred. You are going to the top. And you might get there in the most obtuse, rebellious way, or people will look at you and go, that's just not done in this industry. And you go, yeah, watch me. That's Uranus. Now, let's see what's next. Pluto, no longer a planet, but a dwarf star, still holds its weight in astrology. And Pluto, however tiny it is in our solar system, represents your breakthrough. It is your core transformation. It has to do with the core, the shore of your unconsciousness. Excuse me. So when people have a Pluto transit on their rising sign, any angular space in a chart, the 10th house, the 4th house, the rising sign, or the seventh house, it's pretty major. It's pretty massive. It's health, it's birth, it's death, it's transition. And sometimes the death is psychological because it has to do with your unconscious, your subconscious mind. Now, because Pluto takes a very long time, so does Uranus, so does Neptune. Years and years and years, you may not see much change in transition of those outer planets in your chart. But if you're working with them, if they are angled to another planet, the angles create tension or ease. And they show you the open doors, and they show you what's behind the door, even though you can't find the doorknob. And that's when you can use astrology as a tool to understand another developing picture, because astrology is just not fixed. As we evolve, so do the definitions of astrology. Before Uranus was discovered in the 1700s, or was it the 19? I'll have to look it up. I just went blank. But before Uranus was discovered, hi Claudia, rebirth, yes. So before Uranus was discovered, what was happening at the time? When Uranus was being discovered, a whole lot of technology was coming into play on the Earth. So as we were developing something here on the Earth, suddenly the skies opened up and industries changed, technologies. Now, when I talk about technology, it's not just electricity. The symbol for Uranus and Aquarius is the currents. And basically kind of looks like that, right? Oh, backwards. Elaine, get it straight. Okay. And what it represents is the currents of change. It's not the water bearer. It is the bearer of currents. Now, what's the current? Electricity, water, and air. Those are 3 major currents right now until something else is discovered in science. So at the time that Uranus was being discovered, the Earth was then going through a consciousness, a developmental experience. They were experimenting. How can we, first it was the square wheel turned into the round wheel. That's technology. Someone built a pulley to lift things from the ground to, the second floor. That's technology. So as we look at what kind of technology is developing now, it's space technology. Uranus right now, here we can look at it. Uranus is in the sign of Taurus now for the next 7 years. Let me show you what it looks like in the transits. Look at that. Now, if you know what Uranus looks like, it looks like the letter H, backwards, with a little circle at the bottom. And that's in the sign of Taurus right now. And that represents stability and values. Let me close that. Stability and values with innovation. Now, Taurus does not like to change. That is the energy that does not, but it values progress. So I had a couple who were my clients, and the wife was Taurus and the husband was an Aquarian. Okay. And the wife was the stable at home. The Aquarian worked like crazy, had 3 jobs, in fact, but the Taurus was at home, did the cooking, the cleaning, did the bookkeeping. And then the Aquarian husband would come home and say, hey, I just read about this astrologer. Let's go get a reading. And the wife was like, oh, okay. Let me think about it. What does it mean? Why? I'm not sure. Taurus was, and I laughed because I'm a Taurus. And I said, I totally get it. So that you two are working together is fabulous. It's not easy. So now that Uranus is actually in the sign of Taurus, it's like a little stubborn, but it's innovative. It wants to move forward. But wait a minute, let's think about this. So it's interesting what's playing out right now in technology. Pluto in Scorpio, 5th house. Pluto in Scorpio, that is what's called a natural placement. And in the 5th house, it means, honey, you got to use protection. You got to not jump into bed with every sexy looking whatever so-and-so. And so very intense energy, wants to get to the core, and will get there with stealth mode. But then again, we look at what are the angles to that planet from other houses. And sometimes Pluto in the fifth house is not easy when it comes to bearing children. And I had a client who, in fact, two clients who were men, and they were having trouble, their wives, they were having trouble getting pregnant. And they thought, the wife, it was the two wives, separate people. They didn't know each other, years apart. But the wives simultaneously were going through testing. Maybe it's me, maybe it's, my body, what is it? And when I saw Pluto in the houses of the men, I said, it doesn't mean you won't have children. It means that literally your Pluto represents the reproductive system. It could be your sperm count is low. You want to have your testosterone checked. That was one of the guys, and he did that. No problem. Then they had a baby a year later. The other husband, I said, this is going to sound embarrassing, but the shape of your crown jewels, there's something really off. And he said, oh my gosh, what? How did you know? He said, they're twisted. And he had to have a surgical treatment to untwist his crown jewels so that they could have a baby. So, with a woman, Pluto and Scorpio, it's a very intense wanting to get to the core of the bottom. But sometimes it's not always a feel-good energy, right? And yes, lessons learned, right, Claudia? So, but from now, what can you do with that? It's not just, oh, this is what it is and I'm done. It's what can you do with that? Well, Pluto in Scorpio gets to the bottom of all the matter. Now, the fifth house is all about creativity, children, problem solving, and taking risks. So if there's a place in life where you feel afraid, then this is where having Pluto and Scorpio can say, all right, I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm going to put on that parachute and I'm going to jump out of that plane into that business world. And I'm going to try my hand at singing. I'm going to go paint a picture. I know it's in me. I have to create something. So procreation and creation is huge with Pluto and Scorpio. Just, if you're aware of what you're creating and you're cool with it, aces, Gary, right? So this is basically when we look at Uranus. Now, Pluto, again, as I was just describing through Claudia's information, it is the core. It is transformation. It is the fear. It is, I'm going to have an earthquake. It's your personal earthquake. In a chart, it represents where you are profoundly adept at something and can be scary to other people. Now, again, depending on the house it's in astrology will determine and the angles you have to different planets, and then your own karma on top of that. Remember, it's not just about looking at a chart, it's looking at your information. Because I know many Gemini, I know a lot of Gemini women, and some are ambitious, some are not. They have different rising signs. Someone has asked me recently, well, what about Trump? What's going on there? When is this stuff going to get all straightened out? And, and I said, well, I don't typically do political stuff because that's a whole different animal. And Trump is a Gemini with a Leo rising sign. So the rising sign also is huge in a person's chart. And where he may be a Gemini and the way he communicates is not always the best way. It's not always the most articulate way. What overshadows the way he communicates is his rising sign. Now, a Leo rising can be very humble, behind the scenes, or they can be, it's all about me, baby. I am the narcissist. And do you want an autograph for the book I haven't written yet? So the rising sign will overshadow your entire chart. Your entire chart is guided by the planet that's on the ascendant, also known as the rising sign. So I like to look at three major aspects. I'm just going to wrap this up. My throat's getting a little dry. I'm going to wrap this up. That the three major aspects in your chart is going to be the sun sign that it's in, the rising sign based on what time you were born and where you were born, calculated, and then which guides your entire chart, and then your moon sign. So it's like what I like to call the Holy Trinity in astrology. The sun sign is the theme. The rising sign is who you project to the world, how people interact with you. It is literally your wealth, health, passion, and purpose. And then your moon sign is your connection to flow. It's your connection to feminine energy, to the mother, to what went on subconsciously inside the womb. It is how you allow yourself to express. And so those three combos put together make one powerful, super person, right? Aren't you? Yes, you are. Thumbs up to you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being. Just a couple of reminders. I'm doing a live workshop salon in Sedona on September 9th from 2 to 4 called How to Move from Fear to Love. And it's going to include personal readings and also EFT tapping. There's a link in the comment section that my husband Dean posted, and you can scroll up and you can see the link to register for that event. If you're going to be in town, live in Flagstaff or Phoenix or anywhere in the surrounding area, come on in. It's going to be small and intimate so I can focus on you. Also, what I want to, Dean, if you're still paying attention and you're still here, what I want to give to everyone is the Bodhi Brainstorm link. Now, the Bodhi Brainstorm is something I developed, and the link is right here. So I want you to write it down and go there. Dean will, if he's here, he might be out walking the dog. She wasn't feeling well today. My little baby. She's up since 3:30, and so was I. Whew. I'm feeling it now. The Bodhi Brainstorm is an exercise that you can do. It's an audio exercise. You wear headphones, and it's a theta wave with binaural beats, and it's vibrational healing. It's a hailstorm. Pretend you're sipping something hot like cocoa, and you're, in front of a fireplace, and there's beautiful hailstorm outside, and you close your eyes. In 10 minutes, 20 minutes tops, you must use headphones. No longer than 20 minutes. And just by listening to this, it's going to help break down your resistance to growth, to change, to being more of who you are and who you came to this earth to be. I will be back on, had to look. I will be back on Friday, September. We're in September 7th. I got that without looking, at 1 p.m. And we're going to be talking more about astrology and the actual houses. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being. As always, I wish you peace, and we'll see you next time. Got to get your mojo back.